All right. Aloha, everyone. I'm Zendo Kern, Planning Director for Hawaii County. Today, we're here to share some important updates on the Voluntary Housing Buyout Program. I'm going to go over a couple things real quick. Right after I'm done, we're going to open up with a few words from Mayor Mitch Roth. Then we're going to go over talking about some of the changes to the Voluntary Housing Buyout Program, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A afterwards. Just a quick recap, the the VHBP, or the Voluntary Housing Buyout Program, is a federal program where we were given just over $107 million in grant funding to buy out residential properties that were damaged or destroyed in the 2018 Kilauea eruption. We do this to benefit both the residents that were impacted by the eruption and to mitigate losses from future eruptions by reducing the number of residents living in the high impact lava areas. What we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the mayor in a minute. I'm going to turn it over to Douglas after that. We're going to go kind of do the overview of the changes that occurred to the program. And then we're going to do Q&A. The Q&A is going to be, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A chat button. We're not going to be doing an open forum of raising hands. So all questions, please write them into the Q&A function. We'll go through those, then we'll read the question, and then we'll do our best to answer those questions. Real quick, if you could pull up the slide for the housekeeping protocol. Just want to make sure that you folks have your mics muted. If you do have it on, make sure your cell phone's muted, just trying to avoid any disturbances or interruptions. Please hold your questions until the end of the presentation, and please use the Q&A function to submit the questions during the Q&A portion of the meeting. Really want to thank everybody for being here and thank everybody for working together and understanding and listening, and again, asking any questions that you may have. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Mitch Roth for a few opening remarks. Mayor?
Aloha, thanks, Zendo. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for being here. I think you all know, and Zendo just talked about the federal funds that came. Of course, there's a lot more demand than the funds that we had. And so I kind of look at this kind of like a pizza, where we have like 12 slices of pizza with 100 people who want a piece. And so basically we've come out with a way of splitting the pizza or distributing these funds. And we're going to go over that today. It is not, everybody's not going to get what they want, but I think this is the most fair way of doing it. And I'm going to have our team actually explain how we came to the decisions that we've made, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Now I'll turn it over to our our Disaster Recovery Officer, Douglas Lay. Douglas, you want to take it over and kind of do an overview of the funding and what we're looking at?
Of course. Thank you, Zendo. Thank you, Mayor. So we wanted to kind of brief everyone who joined us today about where we are and how we got here, and also what's next. Again, I think as Zendo mentioned, if you have a question, please use the QA button at the bottom of your screen to offer that question. After a brief couple of slides, we will be kind of taking Q&A that Jen will be moderating. So as many of us are aware, we began the Voluntary Housing Buyout Program in April of 2021. The program was structured in phases: phase 1 for primary homes, phase 2 for second homes, and phase 3 for undeveloped property. We have worked to receive all of our applications, over 800 total were received in the end. And we've made some adjustments and kind of innovations, but changes to the program along the way to help us get here. To date, as you see on the slide, we have been able to acquire 287 homes, and the rough total expenditure is just over $54 million for those acquisitions. There remains 37 additional primary homes that are in the process for closing, and we are making changes as we prepare for the second homes and vacant properties for the next phases of the program. Next slide, please. Last week we made sure that we reached out to all phase 2 and phase 3 applicants for second homes and undeveloped properties to let them know of the changes that we are making. We also set up this meeting to really be an informative meeting for you all as those who are impacted or interested in kind of the changes that are underway. So essentially, kind of within the maximum grant award of the $230,000 that the program has established, we are looking at changing and limiting the amount of the purchase offer for second homes, and also looking at what happens and how do we manage the acquisition of undeveloped properties. After serving the bulk of phase one homes, we are looking at approximately $38 million remaining for property acquisition, which is insufficient really to accommodate the needs of the 500 remaining applications in the program. Next slide, please. So for our second homes for phase two, the buyout offers will be limited to $142,000. This will ensure a couple of things, that we are able to serve all 195 active second home applications. It will enable, we are still acquiring property at pre-disaster value. So if someone's property was less than 142,000, it would still be the amount that the pre-disaster value was. And this will also enable us to use the funds remaining, about 2.8 million or so, for serving phase three applicants. And so there's a couple pieces to this that I really wanted to emphasize. Without any changes as we continue to move forward, we could expend the remainder of the funds for acquisition on second home properties, and as many as a quarter of second homes would not be able to be served, nor would any undeveloped properties under phase three. What we're looking at now, I think, to kind of the mayor's point, is to look at the resources that are available within the HUD funds to administer this program, be economical where we can, but also to think about what funds are available to be able to serve all second home owners who have applied, and to serve with the priority a bulk of the undeveloped property owners in phase three. So wanted to kind of walk through some of what the financial information tells us, right? And we're representing in a couple different ways. So really this pie chart represents the total breakdown of our $107 million. About 5% are reserved for administration, which is for our staffing operational cost. As I mentioned earlier, we've expended to date $54 million for the acquisition of primary homes. We are budgeting $10 million for necessary demolition of structures and significant debris on properties that have been acquired or we expect to acquire. And this demolition is really a requirement of this federal program, right? Properties purchased through a buyout must be maintained as open space after we acquire it. And now we are left with the remaining funds. Thank you. And so this pie chart breaks down the nearly $38 million of the remaining funds and how we are allocating those funds for everyone's awareness. So I want to start with the remaining of phase one properties, of which we're budgeting about $7.2 million to be able to close out those acquisitions. How we have derived what would be the new purchase offer for second homes is to look at kind of a total amount of $142,000 per acquisition. And this is represented here in the portion of the pie chart that adds up to nearly $28 million. We reserved just over $2.8 million to serve the low to moderate income and undeveloped property owners. But really that $2.8 million is reserved for phase three. And I want to emphasize too, in addition to our goal to really serve as many people as possible, it is also really critical to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that low to moderate income households throughout the program, regardless of what phase folks may be in, are also served. And so all of this really kind of shaped the decisions that we find ourselves in today. And finally, really want to represent this similar financial information, but really broken down kind of in this one area, right? So really revisiting the administrative costs, which are maxed at 5% of the total grant award, and program delivery costs, including kind of demolition. To date, we've identified about 24 properties that need some version of demolition to be able to administer the funds properly. The amount spent to date remains the same at 54 million. And the remaining funds that we're showing here is what we broke down in this most recent pie chart we just walked through. And all this information is also on our website. Want to make sure that people are aware of that as well. So what happens next? We know that many of you who are represented among phase 2 and phase 3 properties, some have actually started intake, some have not started intake, working with case manager. With these changes underway, you can expect to be working with a staff person at our Voluntary Housing Buyout Program beginning in February, if not sooner. I know that there's been ongoing conversation with a number of applicants just over the last couple of weeks. And this gets us to kind of being able to start closings in summer of 2024, which is the goal that we're working towards with the work that we need to get done to complete your application and begin the escrow process. For folks who aren't aware, right, once an application is deemed complete and eligible, there's a purchase offer that we issue that then the applicant or the seller executes if they agree to it. There's a purchase agreement, and then the signature of a purchase agreement by all parties enters the roughly 60-day escrow process. So, once you get to that point, it starts to feel like a purchase of property that, you might experience in the private market. And working through all this, we plan to begin work on in a more comprehensive way on phase 3 or undeveloped property applicants in spring of 2024, as we're working phase 2 people through the escrow process into the summer with closings towards the end of 2024 for phase 3 properties. So, really want to give everyone a heads up of kind of where we stand and what folks can expect next. With that, that brings us to the end of the formal presentation, and I would like to transition into the Q&A, which I will hand off to Jen to kind of walk us through that.
All right, so we've got 7 questions right now in our Q&A section, so I'm just going to go from top to bottom. First up, we have a question from Eileen O'Hara, who's asking, why has the Roth administration made no attempt to secure additional funding for recovery? We're 6 years out from the eruption and still have no roads, and the buyout program was legislated in 2020 and still in phase 1. That is her question.
Yeah, I can begin to address the question, and I'm hearing a couple of different points here. Specific to the buyout program. So, the program began in April of 2021 with the kind of securing of the grant agreements with HUD that spring. We have been working through the application process, and we had hoped to be able to be further along in the purchasing of properties at this point in time, and we appreciate everyone's patience as we've kind of gotten there along the way. But we've also done our best to communicate kind of what is happening in real time, even as we shift and should things have to change. But I do want to recognize that we are working diligently to close out phase 1 and kind of are establishing timelines to be able to properly work through the acquisition of phase 2 and phase 3 properties, representing second homes and undeveloped properties.
Okay. Next question is from R. Janice. This question was asked at 11:07 a.m., which means it was before we got into the graphics breaking down our financials that we've done, but I'm going to read it anyway. And just, Douglas, if you hear anything on this that still needs answered, feel free to chime in. But their question is, 107 million originally, now 38 million. So 69 million spent minus 54 million paid to phase 1. That's 15 million unaccounted for, equals 5 million per year, or $19,230 per business day. They ask, is this administration costs or question mark? This includes 10 Puna Strong Saturday parties at Billy Canoy Park or other uses. Thanks, is what they say.
Sure. So I want to emphasize that what we are speaking to is the $107 million that the county received following the 2018 eruption that we have allocated towards the buyout program. There are other sources of recovery assistance that the county has received and is administering. Our community grant making programs are delivered with grants that we've received from the state legislature as a result of the 2018 eruption. Other community engagement work we're doing is through a USDA grant that we also have secured additional funds for. And all of the dollars that we are speaking about and the work we're doing to serve the community through this HUD program, it's 100% related to our buyout program and what it takes to administer and properly spend these dollars that we are responsible for.
And just to add on to that, the regulatory challenges and oversight that HUD requires is very intensive, and probably a lot of folks don't realize how intensive that is, as well as the timing on communication with these organizations sometimes takes more time than we'd like. So everything that we do has to cut the mustard with HUD and has to meet their approval. And that, I would say, is probably 10 times greater than your normal purchase, which is why the entire buyout program and team have had to put together an entire program, bringing people from scratch to actually get this program going. So that's why the funds are accounted for. We have a big amount in reserve for demolition, which is another requirement. And then we'll be continuing to update the budget on the website and providing that accurate information to everybody.
All right, the next question is from an anonymous participant who asks, who's basically asking why the administration costs translate to roughly $19,000 per closing transaction. They're concerned about the amount of money that it takes to close a transaction. I believe that that's a misunderstanding about the administration cost breakdown there. I'll let you handle that one, Douglas.
Sure. Just in order to honor kind of space in this meeting, I want to be clear on where the funds are going. And I can understand that people are looking at the figures and kind of doing kind of back calculations as well. The administrative costs are 5% of the total grant. 95% of the remaining grant is for the acquisition of property, and for the demolition of property, that is a requirement of the grant. And so we are being kind of efficient and trying to spend within the administrative costs that are allocated in this grant to be able to run this program, and the staff time and capacity that is needed to do it. We are not spending anything more than the 5% on administration for personnel or operational cost. All of that has gone towards the acquisition of property and other requirements of the program.
Thank you. Okay, the next question comes from Bernard G, who asks what the income brackets are for the LMI categories for phase 1 and phase 2, and if they're the same for phase 1 and phase 2, and what happens to those who are outside of the LMI bracket.
That's a great question. So when we talk about low to moderate income households with HUD-funded programs, we use the term LMI a lot. That is a scale that applies to everyone, right? So whether you're a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3, the threshold to be considered low to moderate income is the same regardless of kind of where you are in our program. What is that threshold depends on a calculation of your household size and your household income. And so we do have the most up-to-date information on who is considered LMI relative to household size and household income on our website. Please check that and see kind of where you fall as we work through this program. Again, like I mentioned, for second homes, we are looking to serve everyone with these changes that are in place. We will be, everyone has to go through what we call an income certification process to understand what is your income, how do we determine who is low to moderate income and who is not. And to the best of our ability, we will be kind of working to get the low to moderate income folks ready for service through acquisition on the earlier side of the program. But everyone in phase 2 who is low to moderate income will be served. And those who are not will also be served. And when it comes to the undeveloped properties, that's when we are prioritizing with the limited funds that may remain low to moderate income property owners And if there are funds remaining after we've served all the low to moderate income property owners, then we will also look at it from a kind of first come, first serve for non-low to moderate income owners of undeveloped property.
All right, next question comes from our Janice, who's asking with the demolition cost for phase 1 properties, if there are about 20 or so properties equaling 10 million, which is $500,000 per property for remaining structure. They ask, why should phase 2 be penalized for demolition of phase 1? Why is demolition not included in the purchase cost for phase 1? And then they say that they believe that demolition could be done more cheaply.
So when we work through the acquisition process, the program is covering not only the acquisition cost, but a lot of the closing costs that anyone would expect, title, conveyance fee, escrow fees, that is being covered directly by the program. The demolition work is separate and apart because basically it is the county's obligation once we own it to do the demolition. And so we are needing to make things work within these confines of what available funding and what is possible.
Okay, next question also from our Janice. Just bear with me, guys. We're taking these as they're coming, so they're by what time they were submitted. Why has it taken approximately 3 business days with 10 employees in the recovery department to pay out for phase 1 for a phase 1 property? They're saying 260 business days per year, 3 years. They're asking for an increase in efficiency.
Happy to address that.
Yes.
So I think for anyone who's been working with us from the beginning of the program, we understand the need to work efficiently while also really addressing the points that Zendo did around the compliance requirements and the paperwork that the programs had to ensure is in place to properly award these grant assistance funds from HUD to everyone as applicants to the program. This is an unprecedented and new program. The scale of the program is not only new to the county, but also new to the county and new to the federal agency related to lava eruptions. Other buyout programs have been smaller in scale, only related to flooding events. And so, part of this process has been really refining and fine-tuning how to get this program right. In the administration of this program and all federal funds, the risk of not having a proper compliance regime is, basically recapture of funds by the federal government, which kind of impacts our county, our taxpayers, and in some instances can even impact the person who benefited from the grant assistance. This is the risk aspect that we need to manage while also really centering efficiency and trying to do better each day to serve folks through this program. And this is what we've been working towards.
Thank you. Next question is from Bernard G. Again, they are asking a question about their personal application. Douglas, they're asking for an update that they've sent in their application in July of 2019 and are looking for a response.
Okay. So, it's hard to address an individual property question in a space like this. What I will say is that our Voluntary Housing Buyout Program began accepting applications at the end of April of 2021. And if you have a question about your application, please reach out to our office. We'll be providing contact information later on in this presentation, but just know that you can call us at 961-8996. Again, it's 808-961-8996, specifically about your application.
Next question is from Eileen O'Hara. She is asking, Douglas, if you were hired in January of 2020.
So I had the privilege of coming into my role to support this work in November of 2019.
Great. Next question is from Steve Compton. He asks, do buyout offers take into account whether or not the homeowner had their property insured?
So this is a question we get a lot. We have done our best to try to understand who got insurance and who didn't. But with every application, we do request, because we are required to ask, kind of whether an applicant received insurance as a result of the damage to their property following 2018 eruption. to really try to break it down in very simple terms, we need to know what the insurance payments were. We need to know what they were used for. That's all documented as part of the application as required by HUD. But because the insurance is for oftentimes, right, the loss of structure, the loss of use of structure, the loss of personal property, that is, those are funds for a different purpose than the acquisition of property for buyout reasons. And for that reason, someone who may have received an insurance payment, we do not have to deduct any insurance payments from the final assistance of grant funds from HUD. And so, break it down another way, right? If my property was worth $200,000, I received $120,000 of insurance for loss of my structure, my car, other things, then the program will ask for the documentation of the insurance payments that you received, but we will not be using that insurance to deduct from your acquisition amount, right? The offer amount that equates to the federal grant assistance.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Mary Lynn, who asks, is it anticipated that no funds will be available for phase 3 undeveloped land buyout for non-LMI owners?
So at this point, looking at kind of the figures that we are looking at, there is a very strong chance that there will not be funds available for owners of undeveloped property that are not low to moderate income. We have had to look at and are prioritizing low to moderate income property owners in phase 3 for acquisition. As we work through phase 2 and as we get through that process, as we work through the application process for phase 3, the undeveloped property owners, should there be any funds remaining for the acquisition of undeveloped property, then we will kind of look at whom we can serve through that, and we will be in touch with those applicants in the meantime. But just know that to even get to that decision point, we need kind of everyone's contribution of working through the application process at a minimum to understand that, we can understand who is low to moderate income and who is not low to moderate income.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Gary Miller. He asks, is LMI criteria only applied to 2018 income? He says he thinks it should apply to 2019 to 2022 income to include the impacts of second home income loss.
Yes, so to answer that question, when an applicant meets with our staff to go through the intake process, we go through what's called income certification, right? We ask for things like tax documents, pay stubs, all the relevant to how an applicant makes money, right? To income certify. And it is recent information. So the federal regulations about how income certification must be conducted, we look at the most recent available tax returns or other sources of documenting income. We will ask for pay stubs or kind of recent documentation of what your income looks like. And we take the information to understand where you are as of today. So, we will, unless 2018 is the last time someone earned income, right, in a more extreme circumstance, and there are some exceptions that, are within our procedures, but the vast majority of cases, we will be looking at kind of most recent income information as we work with applicants through the income certification process.
Thank you. Bernard G has another question. He's asking if you could explain the delivery costs. I know we kind of did that previously. This question was asked at 11:16. Just maybe briefly go over the administration and what, the delivery costs for the 10 million are.
Right.
That was his question.
Sure. So in sum, the 10 million we're budgeting towards program delivery cost are towards demolition activity. So we've identified approximately 24 properties, many of them with structures on them that need to be demolished. Some of them are in isolated areas, and the 10 million we are reserving for demolition not only is for kind of the engineering, permitting, and demolition activity itself, which we're trying to kind of be the most economical and efficient around, but also because of the federal funds, our environmental compliance requirements include ensuring that we review each site prior to demolition for archaeological or environmental concerns. So that's a piece of it as well, including any demolition cost.
Great. Next question is from Stephanie Wesley. She asks, how long do applicants have to accept the buyout offer once it's presented or selected?
Sure. So across the board for applicants, once you receive your purchase offer, we ask for a response within 30 days. So that is something you would sign and return to us. Once we have received it, then we issue a purchase agreement that kind of all parties sign, both on the seller and the buyer side, and that would open escrow.
Great. Next question is from Will. He asked why we didn't reduce the phase 2 grant award money by another 10 grand in order to serve all of phase 3, including those that are non-LMI.
I understand the question and appreciate the question. Really, what we were doing our best to do was to balance all of the needs that the available funds do not speak towards. And so, you know, really to balance what we can do to serve all the second homes, and also to think about kind of what could be done with the limited resources for phase 3 for undeveloped property.
Great. Janet is asking, she says she lost a second home in the lava eruption in 2018. Can she still make a phase 2 application?
So our program, after it opened in April of 2021, set deadlines for the submission of applications. We have continued to work through those applications to get folks towards eligibility, and of course for phase 1 towards acquisition, but we are not receiving any new applications at this time, and have not for quite some time.
Next question is from Celeste. She asks, what's the cutoff for median income, and is foreign dollar exchange rates going to be looked at when reviewing income?
So I don't have an immediate answer to that question. I'm going to have to take it back to the team and understand, and with HUD too, to understand it. I think we would definitely want to look at equivalencies and making kind of the system work. But I also know that we have served a number of property owners who are now living abroad, a small handful in this first primary home phase. And so I'll have to kind of get back to that. Celeste, if you could make sure you reach out to our program with that question, that would really help us follow up.
Great. All right. Our next question is, when Douglas stated the pre-disaster value in his presentation, is that value the assessed value as per the County of Hawaii tax value notice? Or is that value as dictated by the current market value of properties that were sold prior to the eruption? And has the assessed value on the 2017 tax notices been adhered to in the payout amounts?
So our program is based on what we call pre-disaster value. This is the appraised market value from real property tax for the tax year of 2017. So this is the full year prior to the eruption. And so we often, and it's kind of the total market value, right? Both land and structure, if there was structure, appraised market value, RPT. For those who may have a tax exemption, homeowner exemption, ag exemption, et cetera, then there is also calculated an assessed market value, but we are looking at the appraised market value before any adjustments related to tax exemptions that are within our code.
All right, this next question's a rather long one. It seems that there was an issue here with an application when the person filed their application and what phase they were in.
Okay. I would suggest that please reach out to our program to talk about your case if you're already navigating that with our staff. I want to kind of honor the fact that, you know, this is a recorded meeting for perpetuity, and I think it's best that be dealt with that with our team. Please reach out. Thank you.
And we'll have the contact information. In fact, I'll just page to that slide now, just in case anyone needs it.
Sure, that'd be great.
And that way it's up for the rest, even though we're still continuing to do Q&A, which, by the way, we still have we've answered 20 questions, but we still have another 30 in the queue. So just bear with us here. We're trying to get to them as quickly as we can. Next question is from Esther and Christopher Creer. They're saying, Q1, why isn't the excess funds remaining after covering up to $142,000 for phase 2 properties going back to increasing the buyout amount for phase 2 properties? I think he's asking if there's an excess after the 142, if that would go back into the phase 2 folks.
At this point, we are not planning to be able to do that. Once we've acquired property and once we have been able to close out this program, there are practical challenges to go back and provide any additional grant assistance. And I would also say, though, that we are only making these very specific and challenging but necessary decisions because of the limited funds we have. And so, we just know that we have a fair amount of confidence that the funds as we've allocated them will be expended.
Great. Next question is from Jerry. He asks, why is such a small amount of the money being allocated for phase 3?
I think the best way to address that question is similar to what kind of we've spoken to in the last couple of questions of, to the mayor's analogy of a limited amount of resources and how do we kind of strike a balance of the many different needs against the limited funds. This is where we stand.
All right. Our Janice asks another question. With all these other grants, federal, and state, what happened to the specific buyout funds? So HUD applications, grant making, et cetera, administration costs come out to.
Yeah, I can address the question, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it's important to reiterate that, we've made a decision to administer this program and all the needs that we've been presented with the available funds of that $107 million that HUD has provided to the county. There are many areas of business that the county conducts to provide service to our residents. And it is important that, we stay focused, especially for this meeting, on how we're spending the $107 million. And that's what we're trying to do.
Next question is from Eileen O'Hara. She asked, would you please reveal the low income percentage to date for LMI folks? Like, I believe she means as a whole for phase 1. Why do you expect the LI requirements in phase 3 only as 22,000 times 293 properties, which comes out to 6 million, but you've allocated less than 3?
I understand the question. So, in terms of understanding the profile of income of households who are in our phase 3 undeveloped property application pool, we haven't started a full intake. So we have not gone through the process I described previously around what income certification looks like. What I can say, based on some of our preliminary understanding of the information folks filed with the application, which did ask for income information, did not require backup documentation, as I described earlier. We anticipate the profile of our applicants of undeveloped property to be similar to our community overall, right? And so, that ranges, 40 to 50% essentially, with some concentrations in different aspects of kind of the Puna Makai region. But that's the best indicator we have. And once we begin the intake process and income certification with our undeveloped properties, we'll have a much clearer sense to be able to report back.
Our Janice asks another question. She's asking 5% admin costs per year, and that it seems like she's asking why the grant is paying for those costs instead of normally just being included in employee admin costs. I believe that's what she means.
So the 5% of the grant that we have administered is for the total duration of the program. And so, we are working to ensure that we are performing within that budget for administrative costs, while we also put in the time and the diligence that's required to be able to serve everyone through this program.
Great. Next is from Steve Compton. He asked, does LMI take into account a disabled applicant's medical expenses as well as their income?
It looks at income, and it looks at the income that everyone who's income earning in a household takes in. I'm not aware of any cases that I've come across working with our team where medical costs, which may be part of an applicant's day-to-day living situation, gets factored in, because the HUD has very specific procedures around how we need to perform and document income certification. But as an applicant active in the program, that would be a really good question to please kind of follow up with someone on our team on, because then there may be cases where we've been able to work through that I'm just not aware of.
All right, next question is from Randy and Beth Dorego. They ask, for the LMI brackets, why is current income and household information used versus the income level and household level that you were at the time of disaster? Those could be dramatically different.
So in our income certification process, there are very specific regulations with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that we must follow to do income certification. And this applies whether you are a single working adult, a family of 4, or even an LLC, right? We must go through income certification. And the regulations require that we look at the most recent available income information.
Next question is from Stephanie Wesley. She asks, what do you know about land companies reaching out wanting to purchase vacant land? Where would they fit into this buyout if HUD requires land to remain as open use? Is it a fraud scheme?
Yeah, we are aware of companies around the country kind of making offers to vacant land or even property in general, right? I can speak to it as it relates to our buyout program. From day one, this program has been a voluntary program, and as folks have made us aware of companies reaching out, we've been really clear to kind of distinguish that our program is our program. They are acting on their own behalf and in their own interest. Any one of us as property owners can make the choices we want to make. But just know that, once the county acquires a property through this buyout program, the county will be retaining the property in perpetuity. And so we aren't going to be participating in any of this kind of business activity that may be reaching out to us residents.
Next question is, if not selected for a buyout in phase 3 due to LMI, what are the options if there are no more funds?
So in terms of the programs and funds that the county is administering, there aren't other options to explore relative to the buyout program. There are other types of funding that do support buyouts as mitigation. If those funds were available, then we could consider how we revisit applicants who we could not serve through phase 3. But I also want to be very clear and very genuine that at this point there aren't options after we are able to spend this and the entirety of this HUD grant.
All right, next question is from Christopher and Esther Creer. As per one of the Hawaii County's buyout program's email communications and HUD guidelines, did the county utilize all buyout program funds before utilizing those remaining funds to engage in the economic development component of the CDBG?
Sure. So 100% of our HUD grant, the $170 million, is going towards our buyout activity. We are not allocating any of these HUD funds towards economic development. While economic revitalization is an otherwise eligible area of activity for the CDBG funds, in our class of grantees with HUD, we were required to prioritize housing activity and housing unmet need, which is the term that HUD uses, before allocating HUD funds towards any otherwise eligible activities. 100% buyout program.
Thank you. Next is from Sue Champagny. I'm so sorry if I didn't get that last part right. They ask, 6 years is an incredibly long time for ordinary households to remain in limbo for a buyout. How does this process timeline compare to other recovery buyouts across the rest of the United States?
I can't speak to being an expert on other buyout programs across the country. There have been many, and they've been going on with both HUD and FEMA funds since the 90s. What we've done is we've done everything in our control to secure the grant. So even after the eruption in 2018, the disaster declaration that followed, the congressional appropriation that enabled these grant funds, we did everything we could, jump through every requirement that HUD was requiring as a grantee to try to get this grant started, this program operating as soon as possible. We signed the grant agreement with HUD after all of these compliance requirements were met, right around the time we opened our doors and started receiving applications. And so, please know that we've done what we can to control just to start this program, even if it did not begin until April of 2021. And we're working to also be able to advance the program as well, as quickly as we can.
Next question is, can Hawaii County apply for additional grants?
For purchase of property and buyout activities, my experience is that there is a very limited number of federal funds that can be applied towards this kind of activity. We are in a unique situation of having gone through a federal disaster declaration, and these CDBG-DR funds through HUD, or sometimes mitigation funds through FEMA, essentially are how these buyouts occur. Right now, we're working with our CDBG disaster recovery funds.
I just want to jump in just for a second, because we do apply for all sorts of other federal funds, and we have received all sorts of other federal funds.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Next question is from Ken. They said that they noticed the slowdown in the processing of phase 1 applicants and want to know if the speed is going to increase for phase 2 and 3.
So where we have been with our phase 1 applicants through the closing process has been working with applicants. We tried to get folks through who are ready to get through. And the several dozen we spent the last couple of months working through have been specific circumstances that we've needed extra time to do. Apologies. Once we are able to begin the qualification and acquisition of second home properties, we expect and are organizing ourselves to get to that place of what we were doing, which was 15 closings per week for 3 weeks out of each month. And so working with expediency once we're able to get there to start closing on properties for phase 2.
Great. Next question, I believe I can answer this one. They're asking, will the Q&A be available online or emailed to the property owner participants? It's my plan once the meeting is over. It takes just a little bit for Zoom to process the recording, and then I will be uploading it to our YouTube channel, which you can see right there on the screen is at Kilauea Eruption Recovery. And then I will be posting it on our website and posting the recording on all of our social media, including TikTok after this, to links for the full view. Next question after that is, what are the plans for the land after all the acquisitions are complete?
We've offered some options in our action plan. The goal is really to think about it in terms of operations and maintenance. Much of this is acquired land in the lava field. There may be some opportunities to program some of the lots for community activities. But we are right now focused on really understanding that full makeup of the portfolio of properties that we're now acquiring through the buyout program.
Great. Next question is from an anonymous person who asks, since everyone wants the full amount for their properties, is it possible to start a new program to buy out the remaining properties for their full 2017 tax values that is funded by the state and used money from a program that basically money from the state?
We are working to serve everyone who has applied with the funds that we have. And we are at a place where there will be those that we may not be able to serve.
Next question is, are buyout amounts based off county tax assessment records?
Yes, the offer will be based off of the 2017 appraised market value of properties.
Next question is from Chris. They ask, I understand the requirement for HUD to make the whole process can be more cumbersome, they say, but were these requirements not known from the start of the program? This is supposed to be completed in 2022 and it's now 2024, they ask.
So a lot of core requirements we were aware of as we began the program. What has also shifted along the way is HUD has revised its requirements and it's on certain aspects, like some of the issues we talked about earlier around other assistance that folks are receiving. And I will also say that kind of doing a buyout program in a lava eruption context has raised some very new and novel questions for HUD that we have had to work diligently with them to vet and clear for us to proceed, so that we're all kind of working from the same page.
Great. Bernard's question is asking about staff turnover, that they've had multiple different housing specialists and others to deal with
Yeah.
throughout the process.
Happy to address that. That has happened. I think in terms of what a lot of the county is facing, in terms of the hiring and retention of employees, that is something the program has also been facing. We do our best when there's a staff change to kind of notify applicants that we are actively working on kind of who that will be, and appreciate people's patience and understanding through the process.
Great. We have another question asking about the LMI thresholds, and just to remind folks, that's information is on our website. And then the question after that is, are fully permitted properties being handled the same as non-permitted properties?
So our program looks at appraised market value from 2017. As many folks are aware, improvements that are permitted improvements are reflected in those appraisals, as our county finance department does its job kind of doing this year in, year out. The eruption also occurred in the middle of people's lives, right? And so if there were permitted improvements that were underway, but short of a final inspection and closing of the permit, there is a mechanism. We collaborate with the Real Property Tax Division of Finance to understand how to value those permitted improvements that were completed, but for the eruption would have been completed. And so we look at that as on a case-by-case basis. For improvements that were unpermitted, right, that are not reflected in real property tax appraisal, that is not reflected in the offer for the buyout program.
Next question is from Esther and Christopher. They ask, if the insurance payments received by property owners is not deducted from the buyout amount, why do you guys need that information? What is that information being used for?
Yes, so that information is required by HUD. It is a standard regulation they apply to all grantees to identify all public and private sources of grant assistance after a disaster. It is on our file. We have to show HUD that we asked. We have to show HUD that we got an answer and that it was documented. Even if it, in the case of our buyout program, it does not affect the offer. In other kinds of disaster recovery, rebuilding programs, as an example, there could be an impact.
Next question is, when will you notify applicants that they are not eligible for funds? For example, those who are outside the LMI in phase 3, is there a formal process to withdraw our application?
If folks are interested in withdrawing an application, there's a process. Please call our office and ask for that form.
I have, Renee asks, she says she's submitted her documentation needed plus her 2021 tax info. Will she need to submit her 2022 tax information when it's time for her to be contacted?
I think depending on when we reach out to you, that is something that a staff person is likely to ask for. We essentially need to certify income, and to kind of that income lasts for about a year between the income certification and when we can acquire the property. But we also want to do what we can to relieve the burden of paperwork on our applicants, because we know we are needing a lot from them.
Next question is from Celeste. She wants to know, how will you receive an offer? Is it via email or traditional mail?
So offer letters are sent via email, and we can also send it via paper through traditional mail if that's something an applicant requires. The purchase agreement is the same if we're able to get there with the seller.
Okay, we have another question asking, just to paraphrase, they feel like phase 3 is being penalized. So why were phase 1 properties who weren't LMI paid out, but folks who are in phase 3 who aren't LMI not getting funds, if that makes sense?
I understand the question and where the concern is coming from. From the onset of the program, there have been layers of priority that we have been clear about and built the program around. Those layers have one layer has been the prioritization in sequence for primary homes, second homes, and undeveloped property. And then also within each area of our applicant pool, low to moderate income households, and then non-low to moderate income households. And I just want to really kind of echo the mayor's point earlier around needing to make some very important and critical decisions with a limited funds.
Okay, next question is from Ross, who first thanked the people that they've worked with so far and said that they've been great. They want to know, is everybody receiving 142, or will that number change depending on
Sure.
certain things?
Yes. So with the changes we're putting in place, the 195 active applicants of second homes we're making commitment to serve. The most that folks can expect in that offer is $142,000 for the acquisition cost. But if your property may have been lower than that, then it would be what that 2017 pre-disaster appraisal value would be.
And is it possible that the 142 will be lowered again?
Based on these decisions we're making today, we want to be able to close out the program as we stand today.
Okay. Next up, we have someone asking about their income verification requiring a submission of their income tax filing. It's a tough question to read. I'm having trouble understanding. Let's go ahead and skip that one. Could phase 3, who aren't being paid, bulldoze roads, build tiny homes cooperatively like they did in Kalapana in the lava flats areas and use the land productively?
I will jump in there. Those that have phase 3 undeveloped properties have all of their property rights that they have always had. So if you want to build a house on there, you can get a permit, go through the process, and you can do that. And Jen, we're about to the top of the hour, so if there's like maybe 1 or 2 core questions.
Yes.
Left.
A really good one that's still left is, have any phase 2 applicants been bought out so far, and for how much?
Thanks. To date, we've only bought out primary homes. We have not acquired any phase 2 properties.
Another great question is, will the county be reselling the properties like PGV relocation houses? And will they be keeping them in perpetuity or use for homeless, affordable housing, etc.?
So the county will not be reselling these buyout properties. We will be retaining them. And as part of the acquisition, there is a deed restriction on them. They must be kept as open space in perpetuity. So they will not be repurposed for housing.
And last question, is there a time limit for the HUD grant? How long can it continue?
We executed the grant agreement in spring of 2021. We have 6 years to spend down the funds based on the federal regulations. And so we expect to be able to complete this program, based on the timelines that I shared earlier on next steps for second homes and undeveloped property within that 6-year timeframe.
Would you like any more questions? I think we are at time. Yep, 12 o'clock.
I think it'd be a good point to wrap up. And I appreciate everyone's time and contributions for this meeting today. What I would say is that if we weren't able to address your question today, our program and we are here to kind of tackle the questions that you may have, questions, concerns, and especially relative to your application. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Jen's offered this information here on the slide, and our number is 961-8996. Thank you for everyone for your time today.
I just want to jump in and thank everybody. Thank you, Douglas, Jen, Zendo as well. Everybody else for being on this. These are difficult decisions that need to be made. And we appreciate, your patience with us as we go through this as well. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Aloha, everyone.